Prop firms today are a whole different world from where they first started. But how did we actually get here? From their humble beginnings to the industry giants we see today, a lot has changed, and some of it might actually surprise you. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the evolution of prop firms, what's changed for traders, and why these changes matter for you. With over 8 years trading experience and almost 3 of those being trading with prop firms, and on top of that, working with Blue Edge Financial, where we have got over 1,000 of our members funded with prop firms, I have seen a lot of shift in the industry, from different challenge types to changing rules and the environment changing as a whole. So we're going to break it down as follows. We're going to be looking at the early days of prop firms, the rise of online prop firms, the major changes we've seen in recent years, and how this can impact you as a trader today. Let's start by having a look at what prop firms looked like in the early days. Traditional prop firms were actually physical offices where traders worked in a structured environment, kind of like a 9-to-5 job where you would walk in, do your trading, and walk out at the end of the day. Notable firms like Jane Street and DRW dominated the industry at that time, and they required their traders to use the firm's capital and then share the profits. Now, what were the requirements back then? The entry was very competitive, much in the same way as if you were applying for a job that many people were applying for too. You would either require a degree or some kind of certification proving that you can trade, and you would also have to come with some kind of experience in the industry. There was also no flexibility back then. They would work very strict hours. It was a 9-to-5 job, and there was no freedom. You had to just get results. Now, what were some of the key challenges that they would face back then? There was very high barriers to entry. The traders would have to prove themselves before even getting let access to funds, and this could take months of your time, and the profit sharing definitely favored the firms. Traders would generally retain less than 50% of the profit share. Now, this would be once they have proven themselves and they are consistently profitable and one of the top traders in that firm. They would probably only get max 50% of the profits they make. And in terms of technology, there was not the technology we have today. It was all very manual trading, ticket trading. It's not like we see today where we have all these platforms, all these tools at our disposal. It was not like that at all. It was a very basic setup where you just had the market and you had to make your trades. So it was definitely a different time. It was way stricter. It was not easy to become a trader for these firms. You had to prove yourself. And even when you did get a job, it was intense, 9-to-5, proving yourself, making profits and getting very little of those profits. Now we're going to jump forward a bit and look at the rise of online prop firms. The internet definitely revolutionized prop trading. There was a big shift to online platforms. For example, FTMO, My Forex Funds were the pioneers in online prop trading, and they would predominantly back then just use MT4, and then they slowly started giving access through MT5 as well. This suddenly made it very accessible to anyone with a laptop and some skill. And this brought about the introduction of the prop firm challenges. Prove yourself and you can trade without capital. Firms started introducing evaluation models where traders would have to pass a certain amount of phases before they would actually get access to the funds. It was also a way lower entry cost where you'd be looking at anywhere from about $50 up to maybe about $500, because back then I think the biggest account you could take was a 100K account. And then we have also seen a technology boom where we have had obviously MT5 come into play, allowing us to use things like EAs, different kinds of indicators, and a lot more tools at the trader's disposal to help with your trading. And this technology boom has made it a lot easier for traders to actually find success. So you now have a lot more traders at all different experiences jumping on and trying to get access to these funds. And it is generally a lot easier than it was back in the day. Now, what are some of the major changes we've seen over the last few years? One of the big ones is profit splits. Like I said, traditionally, you would be looking at about 25% to maximum 50%, whereas nowadays you can get 80% upwards to sometimes 100% if it is an A booking prop firm. The next thing is the evaluation process. Back then, there was no standardized evaluation. You had to go in, you had to have an interview, you had to prove your skills. You would have to trade on a demo account, sometimes for months, before they would even give you access to trade with their funds. Nowadays, we have things like 2-phase, in some cases 1-phase, and in some cases even no phase challenges where you can essentially prove your skills and then straight away get access to the funds and start making money, in some cases within a couple of weeks. And then the next thing is the actual capital you had access to. Back then, you would be very limited when you first started. You'd probably be given access to about a 25 or a 30K account, and you would very slowly work your way from there if you can prove yourself. Now you can buy straight into 200K accounts, in some cases 400K accounts, and you can still scale from there, in some cases to $4 million and even higher. Then the next thing I want to look at is the trading flexibility. Back then, you were very restricted. You could not trade through news. You would not be trading over the weekend, obviously, because you would go home. As I said, it was a physical building, and you would also have very limited instruments you could actually trade on, which I imagine could have been very frustrating. Now we have much more clearly defined rules. Yes, these rules are getting harder, but we know where we stand. We know what the rules are. In most cases, we can trade news, or at least we can trade up to news. We can hold trades over the weekend, and in general, we have a lot more instruments we can trade with much higher leverage as well. Let's also have a look at the rules from back then to now. Back then, the rules were often very ambiguous, which could have led to trading frustrations. You had to trade under a floor manager or a trade manager who would always be looking over your shoulder, and that could have been very, very stressful. I imagine myself in that situation, trading with someone looking over your shoulder, constantly judging everything you're doing. It would make it almost impossible to trade without feeling a ridiculous amount of stress. Nowadays, yes, even though, like I said, the rules are getting harder, we know where we stand. There are set rules. You can go through all of their questions, all of their FAQs, and you can make sure that you understand every single rule. And even though now they are bringing in soft rules, as long as we understand them, ask the questions, speak to the support, they will constantly let you know exactly where you stand, how you can trade, what you can and can't do, and make sure that you understand what it is that is expected of you before you actually start trading an account, a challenge, or a funded account. So generally nowadays, it is actually easier to trade prop firms than it was back in the day. And I know a lot of us complain because we constantly see these rule changes. And yes, they have to be very strict with these rules because the business model is such that they actually make money from our failures. So, even though we do moan a lot about the rules and how difficult it is getting, I think sometimes we need to take a step back and look at where prop firms have come from and how difficult it must have been back then. If you wanted to trade with a prop firm with their capital, you would have to really, really work hard. And most of these firms probably only gave up about 10, 20, depending on the size of the firm, seats for new traders. So nowadays they have thousands signing up at a time. So it is way more accessible, but yet we still see a lot of people complaining. And yes, there are some shady prop firms out there. I get that. But for the ones that have been around for a long time, I think we have to just take a step back sometimes and understand that we are actually extremely lucky that we have access to companies like this, to companies that, as long as we can prove ourselves, we don't have to be a professional trader. We just have to pass the challenge that they put out for us. And if we can do that, we have access to some serious amounts of money. Now, the next thing I want to look at is how this actually impacts traders today. First thing I want to look at is the opportunities. We have much easier access to large capitals than we did before, with very minimal risk up front. We also have the ability to scale these accounts to some serious numbers, like I said, in some cases $4 million. Next up, I want to look at the challenges. We have seen more strict rules around consistency and maybe trading around news, and in some cases the drawdowns. And then we are also seeing a lot more soft rules come into play, where there is kind of rules between the lines, if you will, that sometimes you actually will make the mistake before you learn that that is actually a rule. And yes, that can be challenging, and this is something we do have to look out for when we are taking new prop firm challenges, and something we have to make sure that we're doing our research, asking all the questions up front, and making sure we understand everything about the prop firm. The next thing I want to talk about is adapting to changes. Because of all these changes, because things are getting difficult, we have the ability to leverage a lot of tools, right? We can use tools like indicators, some automated traders, some things that help us get in and out of trades quickly, some tools that help us figure out our lot sizes quickly. So there's a lot of accessibility to things like these, and even EAs, automated traders, bots that can trade your strategy. As long as you understand your strategy, you know your strategy, you know all the criteria for your strategy, you can actually set up EAs nowadays that can trade on your behalf. Now, this is definitely not something you could have done back then. So the technology available to us has definitely made it easier. And as a result, you can actually turn this into a full-time business if you want. And then finally, I just want to look at what do we think is next for prop firms. I think there's some trends we need to watch out for. We've obviously seen a huge increase in AI and automation, and the AI is getting incredibly smart. And this is definitely definitely going to be a factor coming into the prop firms in the future. You know, how good are these AI and how good are these bots? I've seen a lot of videos out there now talking about new AI models that are creating some incredible EAs. So this is something we definitely have to look out for. I do think we've gone the full cycle where the rules have got a lot more difficult, but I think we might see maybe a change where there are going to be instances where rules are going to get easier. I've seen prop firm recently that released a new challenge where it's almost they are unlimited. They've really pulled back on the rules and kind of making it way easier for the trader. It's something I will be reviewing soon, but I've seen this now. So there is this trend of maybe kind of heading back to making things easier, right? Yes, I think there's going to be certain rules that stay, that will never move. And I think that that's the key, right? They're constantly trying to make it more attractive for us. And one way to do that is to make things a little bit easier. And then the next thing I think we are going to see is greater transparency with payments, because I think all the regulatory stuff that we've seen happen is not going to go away. It's going to keep pushing on the prop firm industry. And as a result, I do think and I hope that the payouts and actually receiving payouts and making sure that you're getting your money should be easier. I hope the trend does go in that direction where the traders are more protected and make sure that we are getting our funds. Now, is there any potential risks I see in the future? Yes, I see definitely some risks where we have a lot of consolidation in the industry. We have a lot of smaller firms coming in, which they can struggle to compete with some of the big ones. And it's difficult sometimes for smaller firms because of the business model. We've seen this happen before where they end up getting into a situation where they too quickly have to pay out too many traders and they end up having to shut down, and a lot of traders end up not getting their payouts. And we've seen this a lot, and I think this is going to continue happening because I think there are some giants in the industry now and they're going to be very difficult to compete with. But at the same time, I do hope some of these smaller firms come through, hold on, and get to the point where they are kind of rolling and being able to consistently pay their traders. I do think there is potentially going to be stricter regulations still pushed onto the prop firm industry, as a lot of governments have started taking notice of this industry. And I definitely think there will constantly be a push from the regulatory bodies. How this will affect us, I don't know yet. I hope that it affects us in a good way, because at the end of the day, the regulators are there to make sure that we as traders are not getting screwed over. So I hope that this is always a good thing for us. Yes, we might see the odd, ripple effect when they do push on, certain regulations. But as a whole, I think this is always a good thing, because that ripple effect ends up changes being made in the prop firm industry that ultimately ends up benefiting the traders. So that's the hope, that these regulators are not flat out shutting down. They're just making them, conform to certain regulations, which in the long run end up making it easier for us as traders to trade these prop firms. So my conclusion to this video, guys, is that prop firms have come an incredibly long way. And I think we need to sometimes take a step back and look at where prop firms started and how difficult or impossible it would have been for some of us to ever even set foot into these offices to trade with their capital. We now have access to hundreds, if not thousands, of prop firms that we can get capital with, and we can actually make a living and create a very profitable business using these prop firms. Now, I want to ask you guys a question. What is the biggest changes you've seen, good or bad, and what would you like to see in the prop firm industry in the future? I know for us, the future is bright because, like I said, we've actually got now over 1,000 of our community members funded using our incredible prop farming blueprint. And if this is something that you are interested, you are looking at prop firms, you're interested in getting funded, you're interested in making some money from these prop firms consistently, then make sure you go to www.propfarming.com, have a look at our demo video there. I promise you guys will be super impressed with what we have. The product is the best it's ever been, and we are getting more and more of our members funded almost on a daily basis now. With that being said, guys, I'm going to leave you there. That's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was insightful, and I hope to hear from you guys. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our channel, because we're going to bring out a lot of content around prop firms. We're going to be doing reviews about prop firms, and we are going to be just concentrating on prop firms and doing whatever we can to bring information to you guys that'll help you on your journey as prop firm traders. All right, with that being said, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.